Okay, good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Climate Change Working Group. I'm Councillor Anthony McEwen, Chair of the Working Group. I'd like to inform everyone present that the meeting will be broadcast live to the internet via the Council's website and will be capable of repeat viewings. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the Council. In order to ensure that the meeting is managed effectively, can everyone please keep to the following guidelines for speaking? Councillors should only use the raise your hand function to request to speak and only speak when invited to do so by the chair. Please switch off your camera and microphone when not speaking, and remember to set your mobile phones to silent for the duration of the meeting. Any views expressed by any speaker in the meeting are the speaker's own and they do not necessarily affect the views of the council. Please can councillors be aware that the webcast will continue to be streamed live 20 seconds after the close of the meeting. This is due to a time delay in transmitting live. I'll now confirm the names of the remaining members of the committee. Got Councillor Pauline Bell, Angela Benham, Jenny Benzer, Joanne Collins, Dom Elliott Starkey, Simon Evans, Linda Gruby, Madeline Hall, Ian Huddleston, Pete Inman, Pam Reddy, Jill Scott and Councillor Jean Todd. We'll move on to the agenda, starting with agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Jill Scott and Madeline Hall. Are there any others?
There are no others, Chair.
Thank you.
I'll
We'll move
substitute for one of them then, Chair.
Okay. We'll move on then to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest on the matters before us this evening. Has anyone got any disclosable pecuniary interests? And any other interests? Nope, we'll move on then to agenda item 3, the minutes of our previous gathering. Just go through them page by page for accuracy. Is there anything page 3, 4 and 5? No, are we okay then that those accurately reflect our last gathering?
Yes.
Thank you. In that case, we shall move on again then to agenda item 4, which is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund Footpath Project. And we've got a verbal update from Sally, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, so Gillian invited me to come and speak to the meeting, obviously around the UK SPF funding that we've had from central government, specifically around footpath improvements in the High Peak. So we were successful in to receive some money, which Regeneration are sort of managing for us at the moment. And we had dialogue with them sort of to the end of last year about improvements to footpaths, obviously, which fits quite well with sort of the climate change agenda and encouraging people to walk and not use transport where possible, or cars, should I say, public transport. So we've received about £88,000 it is for High Peak across the borough to look at sort of footpath improvements or creation of new routes or improvements or where we can join routes together to increase basically use of some of our footpaths. It was a 2-year, or it is a 2-year, should I say, project, although we didn't receive the funding for last year, so that's 23-24 until the end of last year. So we've kind of now sort of, although we've done some improvements, which I'll talk about in a second, we're kind of looking at the majority of this year now, which is 24-25 spend on some of the improvements to the footpath. So whilst £88,000 seems a lot of money, in terms of actual construction of new footpaths and that kind of way of going forward, it's tricky. So we have tried to look at where we can add value, where there are footpaths in existing sort of projects around, footpath projects, safer routes projects, which we can enhance using the SKPF money. So to date, we've looked at 2 footpaths in Buxton, and these are the ones that cross over Temple Fields. So they are 2 public rights of way which Derbyshire County Council are involved in managing, but they also form part of the Town Team Safer Routes project. So they've been identified as sort of 2 key footpaths which would encourage use across the open space to the school, so Buxton Junior School, and linking into the town centre. So they've been on the radar for some time as part of the Buxton Town Teams project, and it was through dialogue with colleagues at Derbyshire County Council last year that we were able to identify that they had some funding to potentially improve these footpaths. So we're talking about creating sort of a hard surface, because at the moment they're literally just grassroots through the open space. So earlier on this year, we were able to contribute £10,000 of the UK SPF money, footpath money, to improving these 2 footpaths, which is basically the creation of 2 what you would call new sandstone footpaths, which sort of form a V across the site. Project in total is around £45,000, with Derbyshire County Council providing the majority of the funding, and we've provided £10,000 worth of money to obviously support that initiative. And the work commenced sort of not long after the new year, February time, and as I think some of you might have seen, is pretty much nearly completed. I think they've had a little bit of problems with the weather, surprise, surprise. So they're just sort of finishing off at the moment. So that started the project in the Buxton area. We've then looked at some initiatives in central area, particularly around Whaley, looking at the incline, which obviously is the old sort of railway which goes through the sort of the back of the town, and sort of some improvements to the footpaths there, including at the lower section where there's some K barriers, which have sort of for a long time been on the agenda in terms of causing sort of accessibility issues. So whilst they were installed a good number of years ago to prevent motorbikes and access such like, they actually do prevent access with wheelchairs and push chairs. So that's been raised several times around whether there was opportunities to actually remove those barriers and do some landscaping to that section, which would make it more accessible. The Shallcross section of the incline, which is actually owned and managed by Whaley Bridge Town Council, was resurfaced last year, it was, with Derbyshire County Council funding, and they had K barriers at that section, and they actually removed those K barriers on the recommendation of Sustrans because of reasons around accessibility, and has basically had that now since last summer, and there've been no issues with motorbikes whatsoever. So we were kind of waiting to see sort of what the situation was at that section of footpath and whether the removal of the K barriers caused a problem, but it obviously hasn't. So we're looking kind of at that section sort of going forwards earlier on in the year. And then it'll be a case of looking to potentially other sites that are identified maybe in some of our key parks and open spaces, or other key footpaths which communities have identified, potentially in the Hope Valley or possibly the Glossop area, where we can sort of add value to some footpaths, make them more accessible where, for example, a small section is inaccessible, use some of that funding to make those paths more accessible. So the outcomes that UK SPF are looking at is around 10 footpath improvements, and that can be either new footpaths or enhancements or clearing or access improvements. So it's quite general, so it's giving us a bit of flexibility. So that's the main capital funds that have come sort of through UK SPF in terms of footpath improvements. We've had some revenue monies as well in High Peak, which obviously goes to support potentially some community engagement work, and we've started last year dialogue with the Hope Valley Climate Action Group around some of their work that they're doing, the travelling light, the surveys they've been doing with the communities in Hope Valley, which has been really insightful into some of the issues around sort of active travel in the Hope Valley, how people are travelling around, some of the barriers, obviously the issues in terms of visitors to the Hope Valley. And this project, which Travelling Light have been liaising with, started last year with various engagement and surveys around the Hope Valley and trying to identify where there are issues which could be resolved and how people feel about moving around the Hope Valley. Now, they were funded, I think, from the Department of Transport last year, which that funding ended, but they were very keen to continue the work through community conversations in the key villages and areas in the Hope Valley. So we felt that UK SPF revenue money would support that work. So we've provided £20,000 worth of funding to support a 12-month continuation of the work that Travelling Light have been doing in the Hope Valley to try and understand, some of the issues around walking and transport and travel in the area, with a view to potentially using some of this capital monies that we've still got available to use to maybe solve some of the problems that are arising for communities in that area. So that's really kind of where we're up to in terms of the footpath projects, the UK SPF projects. Obviously, service commissioning, my service looks at obviously the park strategy and the Move More strategy are two key documents which sort of drive some of the work around climate change. And obviously Move More, very much about active environments, active and safe places, working with communities to identify routes or opportunities to walk more, be more active, reduce car use, sort of all that comes through the Move More strategy. And similarly with the park strategy, where we are looking at our parks and open spaces and how we can make sure they are safe and accessible for people to use, to move around their spaces rather than turning to the car. Again, Move More. And obviously around the biodiversity sort of issues which are coming to the fore at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Sally. Any comments or questions, please? Joanna.
Yes, thank you. I mean, the funding for Hope Valley is very welcome. So thank you for that. We have got, in fact, a lot of information. One of my worries is sort of survey overload, actually, that people will stop responding because of the sort of process that HVCA originally started. I mean, they may have changed about that. But anyway, my question is the timeline, because it would be great to get some capital expenditure, but obviously that's got to start pretty soon.
Yeah.
So
I think my understanding, with the work that the Hope Valley Travelling Light Group are trying to do is over the next few months. So over that kind of summer period to try and have those conversations between sort of now and I'd say July. That's kind of what we've written into the agreement. So we've still got that little bit of time. I mean, we've got till March 2024 and 25 next year to spend the rest of that capital. So I know what you're saying. It can be a bit tight, but there would be opportunities, I think, to look at some areas in the Hope Valley for some capital monies, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, good. So that would start. I mean, because then you've got the winter.
Yeah,
as you've said, footpath work is very difficult. So so it'd be a few months.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. Any other questions or comments? Dom.
It's, let's see if my camera works. It's just a quick one. Just while we're on about footpaths, I know that planning application's been approved down on Dinton Road, just where they've put in the new crossing. If they build it as is being passed, that will make that actual walk-through route that many students use. They won't be able to. Basically, the footpaths will have to move, which means the crossing's in the wrong place again. I just wondered if there was any kind of clarity around that.
I'm afraid I don't have not enough knowledge about the planning application around that footpath and what's being moved. I mean, we can find out and speak to planning about it.
If you could, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Dom. Jean?
If you're talking about the Dinting Road planning application that we had on yesterday, was it yesterday? It's not been passed yet. It's still going to appeal.
That's a different application, I believe, Jean.
Yeah.
This is for the site a little bit further on that's already. It did have some part of it that was rejected initially and was approved on appeal, but I believe it has now got all its approvals in place. I think the last time it went to planning was towards the end of last year for the full application. As I understand it from. No, it's not Adderley Place. It's the other side of Dinton, near to the station.
Yeah.
As I understand it, from what I saw of the map, there will be a new route highlighted as part of the development. And I understood there'd been comments from DCC to make sure that it lined up with the crossing. But I've not sort of looked at it for quite a while, so
No,
it
that's fine.
may
I
well
think
be
the new
planning.
route-
Planning can advise sort of where it's up to.
Yeah, the new route, I think from memory, it goes round almost round the outskirts, and that's where there was a bit of discussion around how that's actually going to like line up with the new crossing safely as well for young people. So yeah, but that's fine. I can if you could have a look at that for me, that'd be really appreciated.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Well, I could just
Go on,
comment.
Jean.
I didn't realise there was so much going on with the footpaths, to be honest. So that's really pleasing to hear all that. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
And I have had a quick look at the Temple Fields footpath, and it's not. I think it's doing okay at the moment. Rachel Quinn even said it's wide enough for her to drive her car on, which isn't exactly what was wanted, but
it is difficult. I mean, it's like I mentioned about the ones at the incline in Whaley, where we've put these barriers in, which have been, predominantly to stop cars and motorbikes and those kind of things, but are actually, contrary to what we're trying to achieve. They're stopping full access. And I think, I suppose you have to be mindful of the area and monitoring it and seeing if it's a prolonged issue, or whether it is just a sort of an interim thing where somebody's driving a car. But I suppose at Temple Fields, you've always had that issue where you could drive almost a car. It's like we've just created this footpath for people, but I suppose you could have always taken a car on, I suppose. But yeah, we'll just have to monitor it and see.
Can you describe a K barrier, by the way?
It's like that, so that it doesn't necessarily. I mean, it would stop cars, obviously, if you'd got barriers either side, but it's to stop. It's quite narrow, so allows people and some push chairs, but it narrows at the top so that you couldn't get a motorbike handlebars through it. So that's kind of the idea. It doesn't stop prams, but it's what we've found in Whaley is it's stopping mobility scooters and wheelchairs because of the design of it. I mean, these are particularly old ones anyway, so I suspect over time there's been modifications to K barriers, but Sustrans have kind of advised against them and almost said that if a route then becomes a lot more usable and accessible, it almost self-polices. So that's kind of been the theory, and certainly at the Shallcross incline end of Whaley, I don't think there's been any problems there for the last 12 months, I would say, with motorbikes. So we're kind of taking a lead off that.
It's meant to allow push bikes through, I think, is it?
Yes, yeah.
That's what. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jean. Sally, just one from me. County are due to be starting consultation on the active travel master plan that they've done for Glossop. Have we got? I think although I've seen sort of the drafts, and the drafts are sort of a bit woolly on it. Have we had anything more from them around sort of trying to get the missing bit of the Transpennine Trail completed?
Not as such yet. I know that's an issue. Obviously, that's been flagged up several times. But not as far as we're aware. We are obviously in discussions with them. They're keeping us informed, and it's something we can raise again with them. Definitely, but I've not seen anything as such about that particular section. But I know it's high on the agenda for a lot of people. It came up in conversation yesterday as well. So yeah, we can certainly pick that up with them. Yeah.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to.
Yeah.
It'd be one of those. It'd be either nice to get it finished off, or at least if there is a significant reason that they can't sort of finish it off, if they could look at some of the alternatives for getting access to what they've called the Gamesley Woodland area, the old Mottram Yard, because there is a couple of additional bits that they could probably do so that you could get access to it from other places rather than having to go around to either Simondley or the bottom of Charlesworth to get on it. There is a couple of additional places where you could get access I suspect
Yeah.
relatively easy without too much expense.
Yeah, and this is what we've done, obviously at Temple Fields slightly differently, but we've been able to have those conversations with colleagues. If they've got some
Yeah.
funding, we've got some funding, and these are the kind of sites and footpaths where we're looking at where it adds that bit of, if we can contribute a bit and they could contribute some, it could make a big difference to access. So it's certainly worth, like I say, those conversations. So yeah, I will pick that up with them. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Sally. Okay. Last time of asking, anyone else? No, in that case, thanks, Sally, for the update. And don't forget, if folk have a query that comes up afterwards, you can, of course, get in touch with Sally separate from the meeting. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. In that case, then, we shall move on. But as far as I can see from the list of attendees, nope, you are with us. Move on to Simon Olway, who's going to tell us about the updates to Buxton Pool and Gym in terms of the solar panels. Simon.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Apologies for being a bit later, and thanks for your patience in waiting for me. I'll just share a presentation that I'll show along the way. Hopefully you can all see that.
Yep.
Great. So yeah, thanks for having me along tonight. So I'm Simon Alloway. I'm the Move More Development Officer with High Peak Borough Council. Been in post for just over a year, and this sort of project is very new to me, so it's been quite an interesting one to get my teeth into to understand. My experience and generally the role for me is around our Move More strategy, and also very much links in with the Leisure Transformation Plan, hence the link with the Buxton Pool for this one. So as an overview to this project, it's government funding has been used to help the council in its target to reduce CO2 by 80% by 2030. So the council applied for funding through the government, through an organisation called Salix, who are overseeing that funding, to apply for some decommissioning of gas boilers and the installation of air source heat pumps and solar panels as part of the works. So the bit of background for you, just sort of keeping it fairly high level, the application was submitted at the end of, in October 22. We were informed of the outcome of the decision being successful at the start of January in 23, just over 1.2 million, which is obviously a really good amount of money for us to get towards this project. We began engaging with external professional teams around August, September time 23. We currently have Leisure Energy as our main contractor on the works, and we're working with a project team from Parkwood, who obviously run the leisure centres, but it's Parkwood's, it's an offshoot of Parkwood, their professional project management team, so PPM as they're known, who are actually project managing the project for us. Cost certainty for the project was reached in October 23, and then works started at the start of January 24. So as things currently stand, the construction phase started in early January. Mechanical and electrical works within the leisure centre then went forward to enabling the existing heating system to be converted over. So the initial pipe works and all the other intricate workings that needed to be put into place for that to get things underway for it. The project included 131 solar panels, which were installed on the roof of the leisure centre. So they are now in situ. I'll show you some images of that in just a moment, and they'll provide a large electricity generation of 55,447 kilowatts per annum. That's the estimated value for that. There's also packaged plant, which is effectively the main plant for all of the for all the air source heat pumps and the actual new workings within the centre, which will they will be situated within the car park for the Pavilion Gardens. So we're just currently working away with lease arrangements and some other background works there to finalise the arrangements for when that will go in. But it's due in June 24. And then finally on that, there's also some works to do with power upgrades for a high voltage connection and a low voltage connection to enable all of this to be effective. And the DNO, as it's known, is Distribution Network Operator, which for us in Buxton is Electricity North West. We're liaising with them to finalise arrangements for all the works that will need to be done to enable that to be completed, which will just effectively be in two parts really. There's the initial part, which was the solar panels and connecting up various bits of pipe work in readiness for the electricity upgrades, and then the electricity upgrades will follow it a little bit later on, whilst various bits of background works are being finalised on that. Here's some images for you. So these are the solar panels on the roof of Buxton Leisure Centre, so right on the very top roof. They were successfully put up there, and they will be connected as soon as possible. At the moment, we're just awaiting some other decision making based on the DNO, as it's known, the Distribution Network Operator, as to when we will connect up to that. So we, in theory, can connect up before all the other works are done, but there's just a decision to be made as to whether it's cost effective to do that now or just wait a short while for certain information to be received. But it's, as I say, that's all in situ and ready to be connected up, which is very positive. Here's some images of the outside of the building as it stands. So the images, sort of the four on the left-hand side of the presentation there, show some of the pipe work that's on the lower roof of the leisure centre, where you've got the sort of two-tiered roof element to it. So some of those pipe works are in place there, sort of going along the side of the building effectively, as you would look at it. And then the image on the right there shows the pipework coming down again to the side of the building. That will be painted as well, so it won't, when it's finished, it will have a nice coating of paint around it just to blend it in a little bit with the background wall, so it won't stick out and be such an obvious thing and to look at as you go past it. And then there's some images there just of some of the internal connections that have been made to date. Obviously, it's very complex in terms of the different pipe work and connections that need to be made for the team to get everything in place in readiness for the air source heat pumps to be connected within the car park. And as I say, that's all been done over the last few months, really. So started in January. So they've made quite quick work of that as we've gone through, and that leaves us in the position now, as I say, where it's left to the connection of the high voltage and low voltage power supply, which will allow everything to be connected up with the air source heat pumps once they come into being in play at the car park. And then that will hopefully allow us to have final commissioning and completion of projects around the autumn time. The time frame is still subject to change. It could actually move sooner than that. We're reliant on a third party in the Distribution Network Operator in terms of receiving some of the information and making some of those plans, hence the fact there's no defined date as such for the finish yet, but we're hopeful that that's going to be sooner rather than later as things stand. And that really ends the current state for the project, really. We're hopeful that when the project's complete, it will reduce carbon emissions by up to 140 tonnes. So some real positives that should come out of it once complete, really. And should align really with the projects that many of you will be aware of that we've got a bid of, which has gone through a lot of the same challenges along the way. But as I say, we're really positive about the fact it's moving in the right direction and making good progress now. So happy to take any questions if anyone's got any.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Any comments or questions, anyone? And it looks like you're getting away lightly. Yep, if there's no, okay.
Right,
If there's no comments or questions, then thanks, Simon, for the update, and we look forward to sort of the final bits getting signed off, which I know there's a couple of complicated negotiations going on with our partners elsewhere to get the sort of the last bits around the car park sorted out, and I'm hopeful that'll be done before long, and we'll get to see the finished project. And for the more cynically minded amongst you, it should also help us to make some savings on what it currently costs to run the pool as well. So an added benefit to it. Okay, we shall move on then to the draft schedule of meeting dates, for which there's the paper in the agenda. Are there any comments, questions, or do any of those dates pose any major problems for folk? I'm seeing no hands or hearing no objections. So in that case, those will be the dates for our meetings going forward for the next year, and we'll make sure those are included with the rest of the calendar of meetings, which will go to the annual council meeting in a fortnight's time. Now, just while you were thinking, sort of, you're all getting off lightly this evening, at the exec on Thursday, just gone, we considered the Nature Recovery Declaration. I'm just going to share it on screen now, just in case folk haven't had a chance to look at it so far. But we considered and approved in outline the Nature Recovery Declaration that's showing on the screen at the moment. However, there was a couple of comments from both members of the exec and councillors that were in attendance at the exec meeting, that there's a couple of bits of the wording in it that are not the best, or not so much plain English. So we're going to sort of just put the wording out for sort of a little bit more consultation before it goes out to any wider consultation, so that we can try and make sure that we've got the wording right, and not only have we got the right intentions and targets or plans within the declaration, we've also got the wording right so that everyone knows what it means. But we'll get this circulated out separately. Apologies, I thought it'd been circulated already. But are there any comments or questions on it whilst we're here? Jean, are you saying out?
Sorry. Well, I should just mention that I don't think they can click on these notes where you've got the yellow notes. I presume because that hasn't been circulated, has it?
It's in ModGov, and if you click on it in ModGov on the exec papers, I believe it does show you the details.
No, it wasn't in that form though, was it? Better if we had it in that form, or at least, unfortunately, there wasn't time to get the amendments in that are noted there. So hopefully,
Yeah.
are we going to?
If you look at it in ModGov, you can click click the links that will show you the alterations.
I didn't think it was in that form, to be honest. But it's been put in since, has it?
Yeah, it's down as agenda supplement for the 18th of April.
No, it's still not in that form, is it? Oh, it is. I'm sorry. I take it back. Okay, I didn't see it in that form previously. Well,
but essentially, what we're looking for, if folks can have a read through it, and if there are any bits that don't read right or don't make sense, please get in touch with Gillian and the team, and we'll get those. We'll get the wording as plain as we can do, given the topic, and then we'll get it recirculated then as the approved version. Joanna.
I just wondered what the timeline was for this, because I think, actually, to be honest, I can't remember when the full council meeting is, but I think it was going to be tabled in May at the full council meeting, which is on the 9th, which is pretty soon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, do we have to have the finalised version 2 weeks beforehand? Because that gives us a day.
No, we've got it. We've approved it at the executive, so essentially it's more a presentational issue. If we've got the wording approved, then we can take it to full council as amended as appropriate. If not, then we'll either bring it back here or to the next exec or just publicise it in some other way to say, you know, this is the final version and it's now a live document, if that makes sense. Gillian.
Okay.
Yeah, I think unfortunately because this was sent to the graphic designer to put together before the final copy was agreed, and we aren't able to change it. So it was, yeah, experience tells us now that this was the better way around, was just to send a Word document for now until it's improved. So if it comes to it that Katie can't pull this together in time for whatever reason to get it out, we'll just send a Word. Okay, so I think that'll be fine. Yeah.
Could I also say that Katie did ask if it was the declaration was approved, was it subject to set amendments or approved subject to portfolio holder agreeing final changes? So that was a question from her.
Subject to you agreeing the final changes, as you were
Right.
amongst those commenting that some of the wording was not quite appropriate English.
Well, I'm not sure I was actually, but
Can I just say I didn't write it, so it's not in Scottish. So
No.
But we
I
still
think-
record.
I think the comments were around sort of to get it in as plain English as possible. There was a little bit of
yeah.
there was a feeling there was a little bit of officer speak in terms of some of the way some of the pledges are worded, and if we can get a little bit of plainer wording in, it'll make it a better document to read.
Right. So anyway, if people have any comments, please send them through.
We'll,
Yeah,
we'll
if
get
you
it.
can-
We'll get it recirculated on email. We'll just do a little check. If it's sent out like this, you can still. Well, there is a separate document that's got the list of amendments on, but if you open it up in any PDF reader, you should be able to click on the little yellow notes that are next to each of the points. That'll show you the details of what's on the point. And if we can try and get any comments back within the next week.
Joanna's got a query, I think.
Yep, go on, Joanna.
Yeah, it was, I mean, again, it's just sort of technical. It would be great to have this on a Word document so that we can put in comments and track changes.
Yeah, well, I think that should be possible. Can we get it circulated in a Word doc?
Yeah, that won't take long. Yep, I'm sure.
Even
Katie's
a
got
Word
it, yeah.
doc with these current amendments in,
Yep.
but okay.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit of a hassle for everyone. but-
Yeah, I'm sure Katie must have this as a Word doc anyway. So yeah, well, we can, and if not, it'll take 10 minutes to type that out. So it'll be fine.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okie doke. Any other comments or queries on it? In that case, then, if I can thank you all for your attendance this evening and wish you the rest of a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Chair,
Thank-
can I just make a comment? We
Thanks,
are still
Anthony.
streaming. Can everybody leave the meeting, please, without making comment, because it is still streaming. Rachel's doing that for me, but she's not just doing it right now.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Say
you.
goodbye, though, Okay.
Goodbye.
Good night,
Thank
all.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.